Hari. Jaya Gopi Kandavala Girivardhari. Yasoda Nandana Brajana Ranjana. Yasoda Nandana Brajana Ranjana. Ramunatira Vanachari. Ramunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we have the verse, or what's that? 6, 5, actually. Did he read them both yesterday, 4 and 5, or today we're on 6? Where's the verse? He put 5 on the board. He put 5 on the board, so we were going to do 5. Are you going to put it on the screen? Okay, so we'll put it on the screen. Okay, start. Okay. Ramani Ubhija Jatinam Yer Va Yagnas Tu Sambrita Kesha Smashu Nikani Asha Shila Lohabra Vijitam Ramani Ubhajira Jatinam Yerva Jagnas Tisambrita Kesha Smashu Nikani Asha Shila Lohabra Vijitam Ramani Ubhajira Jatinam Yerva Jagnasi Sambrita Keshasmishu Nikani Asha Shila Lohabra Vidujatam Ramani Ubhajira Jatinam Yerva Jagnas Tisambrita Keshasmishu Nikani Asha Shila Lobha Vidudyatam Manupija Jatinam Ramani Ubhajita Jatinam Yerva Yagyasti Samrita Yerva Yagyasti Samrita Keshasmishu Nikani Asya Keshasmishu Nikani Asya Shila Lobha Shilala Pravidyutam
Romanudbija Jatina
Romanirvajita Jatinam
Yarvayagyastu Sambrita
Yarva Jagnasti Sambrita
Keshasmashu Nakanyasya
Keshasmishu Nakanyasya
Shilaloha Bravidyutam
Shilala Pravidyutam
Ramani Udbhija Yaritam
Romanirvajita Jatinam
Vairvajnanastu Sambrita
Yarva Jagnasti Sambrita
Keshasmasru Nakanyasya
Keshasmishu Nakanyasya
Shilalobha Bravidyatam
Shilala Pravidyutam
Romani Ubijajitam
Romanirvajita Jatitam
Yerva Yagnastu Samrita
Yerva Jagnasti Sambrita
Keshasmasru Nakanyasya
Keshasmishunya Kanyasha
Shilalobra Vidyutam
Shilala Pravidyutam
Ramanya Udbhija Jatinam
Romanirvajita Jatinam
Yarva Yagnastu Samrita
Yerva Jagnasti Sambrita
Keshasmasru Nakanyasya
Keshasmishunya Kanyasha
Shilaloha Pravidyutam
Shilala Pravidyutam
Romanyudbhija Jatinam
Romanirvajita Jatinam
Yarva Yagnastu Sambritaha
Yerva Jagnasti Sambrita
Keshasmasru Nakanyasya
Keshasmishunya Kanyasha
Shilaloha Pravidyutam
Shilala Pravidyutam
Romanyudbhija Jatinam
Romanirvajita Jatinam
Yarva Yagnastu Sambritaha
Yerva Jagnasti Sambrita
Keshasmasru Nakanyasya
Keshasmishunya Kanyasha
Shilaloha Bravidyutam
Shilala Pravidyutam
Romanyudbhija Jatinam
Romanirvajita Jatinam
Yarva Yagyastu Sambritaha
Yerva Jagnasti Sambrita
Keshasmasru Nakanyasya
Keshasmishunya Kanyasha
Shilaloha Bravidyutam
Shilala Pravidyutam
Romanyudbhija Jatinam
Romanirvajita Jatinam
Yarva Yagyastu Sambritaha
Yerva Jagnasti Sambrita
Keshasmashu
Keshasmishunya Kanyasha
Shilaloha
Shilala Pravidyutam
Romanyudbhija Jatinam
Romanirvajita Jatinam
Yarva Yagyastu Sambritaha
Yerva Jagnasti Sambrita
Keshasmasru Nakanyasya
Keshasmishunya Kanyasha
Shilaloha Pravidyutam
Shilala Pravidyutam Everyone chanted. So we'll do the word by word synonyms. Ramani, hairs on the body. Vajita, vegetables. Jatinam, of the kingdoms. Yai, by which. Va, either. Jagna, sacrifice. To, but. Sambrita, particularly served. Kesha, hairs on the head. Smeshu, facial hair. Nakani, nails. Asha, of him. Shila, stones. Loha, iron ores. Abra, clouds. Vidyutam, electricity. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The hairs on his body are the cause of all vegetation, particularly of those trees which are required as ingredients for sacrifice. The hairs on his head and face are reservoirs for the clouds, and his nails are the breeding ground of electricity, stones, and iron ores. Purport: the polished nails of the Lord generate electricity, and the clouds rest on the hairs of his head. One can therefore collect all sorts of necessities of life from the person of the Lord, and therefore the Vedas affirm that everything that is produced is caused by the Lord. The Lord is the supreme cause of all causes. So that's just a short purport. I can go on to the next verse. Okay. Bhavo loka palanam praesho cheshma karmanam. It's a real short verse, just 2 lines. The Lord's arms, Jai Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. The Lord's arms are the productive fields for the great demigods and other leaders of living entities who protect the general mass. Purport: this important verse of Srimad Bhagavatam is corroborated and nicely explained in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, text 41 through 42 as follows. Yad yad vimabnat sattvam Srimad Ujatameva Tata Deva Gachat from Mama Tejo Mashisam Bhavam Atava Vatunena Kim Jantnena Jad Arjuna Vistya Bharyamidam Krishnam Ekasma Stito Jagat. There are many powerful kings, leaders, learned scholars, scientists, artists, engineers, inventors, expatriators, archaeologists, industrialists, politicians, economists, business magnates, and many more powerful deities or demigods like Brahma, Shiva, Indra, Chandra, Surya, Varuna, and Marut, who are all protecting the interest of the universal affairs of maintenance in different positions, and all of them are different powerful parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. So these verses, text 41 to 42 of Bhagavad Gita, is opulence of the absolute, and these are the last 2 verses. And Krishna is saying, but what use is there of all this detailed knowledge with just a single spark of myself? I pervade and support the entire universe. So all things that are great and wonderful are only just a tiny spark of his pleasure. So this is what Prabhupada's nicely explaining this here, you know, in the terms of this verse, you know, in this specific context of the verse regarding leaders of the universe and of this planet as well. So I mean, so all this, they're just a single spark, part of just a spark of Krishna's splendor. So I was wondering where I left off. Like Brahma, Shiva, Indra, Chandra, Surya, Varuna, and Marut, who are all protecting the interest of the universal affairs of maintenance in different positions, and all of them are different powerful parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord Shri Krishna is the father of all living entities, who are placed in different high and low positions according to their desires or aspirations. Some of them are particularly mentioned above, are specifically endowed with powers by the will of the Lord. A sane person must know for certain that a living being, however powerful he may be, is neither absolute nor independent. All living beings must accept the origin of their specific powers mentioned in this verse. And if they act accordingly, then simply by discharging their respective occupational duties, they can achieve the highest perfection of life, namely eternal life, complete knowledge, and inexhaustible blessings. As long as the powerful men of the world do not accept the origin of their respective powers, namely the personality Godhead, the actions of Maya, illusion, will continue to act. The actions of Maya are such that a powerful person misled by the illusory material energy wrongly accepts himself as all in all and does not develop God consciousness. As such, the false sense of egoism, namely myself and mine, has become overly prominent in the world, and there is a hard struggle for existence in human society. The intelligent class of men, therefore, must admit the Lord as the ultimate source of all energies, and thus pay tribute to the Lord for his good blessings. Simply by accepting the Lord as the supreme proprietor of everything, since he is actually so, one can achieve the highest perfection of life. Whatever a person may be in the estimation of the social order of things, if a person tries to reciprocate a feeling of love toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is satisfied with the blessings of the Lord, he will at once feel the highest peace of mind for which he is hankering life after life. Peace of mind, or in other words, a healthy state of mind, can be achieved only when the mind is situated in transcendental loving service of the Lord. The parts and parcels of the Lord are endowed with specific powers for rendering service unto the Lord, just as a big business magnate's son is empowered with specific powers of administration. The obedient son of the Father never goes against the will of the Father, and therefore passes life very peacefully in concurrence with the head of the family, the Father. Similarly, the Lord, being the Father, all living beings should fully and satisfactorily discharge the duty and will of the Father as faithful sons. This very mentality will at once bring peace and prosperity to human society. So Prabhupada, he was mentioning that first Bhaktaram Jagatapasam Sarvalokam Maheshwaram. So just by accepting the Supreme Lord as the proprietor of all planets and demigods and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living beings, then one can attain peace, the real peace. And Prabhupada was saying this is the peace formula for society. So what they were saying, and I listened to 2 classes on this. So they were saying that basically, and Prabhupada, the way Prabhupada says it in his lectures, he says the basic principle is all wrong, right? Is that they do not know who they are. They don't know who they really are, that they're spiritual soul, part and parcel of Krishna, that is eternity, knowledge, and always eternally blissful. Here Prabhupada was saying inexhaustible blessings, right? Eternal, full of knowledge, right? Yeah, and inexhaustible blessings, unlimited eternal love of Godhead and bliss and devotional service with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the basic principle, that's being all wrong from the bodily concept of life. So there's everything that they do and they accept as themselves being the center is all wrong. It's the wrong principles, wrong place to start from. So it's what is it? They want to supply sense gratification or whatever's going on. It's really, really confusing nowadays. The sense gratification is being restricted or it's being altered in some way. It's causing cancer and sickness and stuff like that. You know, the global situation is not too good. These people are demons. They think they're doing everybody a good favor because economically it's cheaper to put the poisonous GMOs in the food and spray the agriculture with dangerous pesticides and chemicals that are extremely harmful like that. So, yeah, there's a lot going on. And, you know, at least they're trying to find some sort of a cure for disease, right? Or to solve the pollution problem or how to stop wars, right? But these things are always going on. So Prabhupada was saying it's problems, you know, some sort of limited temporary solution to their problems, which doesn't last. There's another problem. Or there's still the problem they had, but it's another problem and still a problem. So that's the basic conception. So these verses are really nice. They're explaining the universal form of the Lord, like the trees and the vegetation of being the hairs on the body of the Lord, and the clouds are the resting place in his head. So there's descriptions here that there's the rivers are the Lord's veins, and the mountains are the Lord's bones. The sun and the moon are his eyes. So this is also being expressed that his hearing are the 10 directions and is the origin of all sound. Right. So that's where we get our sense objects, subtle sense objects and sense objects actually coming from the Lord, or that his seeing power is the being as the sun is the source of the seeing power of all living entities. His nostrils, his smell is the source of all fragrances, and the air is the source of all tactile feelings, sensation. So this is the universal form of the Lord. So here in the universal form of the Lord, again, Brahma's explaining this, and he began with Mahavishnu, or Karunadakshay Vishnu, and how all the universes are generated. And then how Garbhadakshay Vishnu entered into each universe, and Brahma was born. And the Supreme Lord again enters the universe as Kashara Dakshay Vishnu. So what we were talking about in the previous chapters when we were reading about the Virat Roop is that the Virat Roop is it's to purify the living entity, to bring them into the mode of goodness, to set the personal conception of the Lord, although it's a very cosmic type of a description where the Patala planets, and that was another thing that was mentioned, is how the planets are mentioned at being the soles of his feet, and the Talatala and Patala, and then the Purloka, being in his waist, and then Tapavana, Tapaloka, and all the way up to Janaloka and Sachiloka. And then above that, it was the verses that explains that Brahma Loka, or Brahman Loka, being described in this verse, was actually describing the transcendental realm of the Vaikuntha Loka planets in the spiritual sky. And not the Brahma Loka, the material world, which is technically called Satya Loka, where Brahma lives in Satya Loka. So this is just to purify the mind of the petitioner, to come to a personal conception of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and be able to accept how Krishna is displayed all over millions of universes, and this is just one tiny portion described as being 1/4 of a cloud of Mahat Tattva as compared to 3/4 of the unlimited spiritual sky, which is continuing to expand with unlimited forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And most of the devotees there are extremely self-realized. And Krishna says, one who returns to my abode does not return again to this miserable world of birth and death. It also states that their abode of mind is not illumined by the sun, moon, or electricity. Like that. So this is a mechanical arrangement in this universe, and it's done in such a way as that it supports life. And the leaders of society are as stated in this verse and stated in Sripada's purport, his actual healthy condition is to accept that the Supreme Lord is the benefactor and the well-wisher, and is the source of their powers. So they have some powers of administration or some intelligence, or a very, very powerful men. They have all the sources and the resources available to them. Even if they need to kill someone, they can do it really easily. They don't even have to do it themselves. They're very, very powerful persons like that. They can do it a lot of different ways, or your fate is in their hands. They can condemn you to prison like that. So these are some powerful persons, judges. He can give you a pardon if you get on the side of the judge and be able to present enough evidence. Otherwise, if the judge doesn't like you, somebody said, what was it? The judge said, I'm going to give you 3 months in jail. The guy goes, oh man, I can do that standing on my head. And the judge goes, okay, 6 months. You still got something to say? You know what I mean? So, they can do it. They mean business. So, you're going to want to be respectful if you have to go to court. Because they can throw the book at you pretty good. Give you some pretty hefty fines you have to pay, to kind of make things hard for you. But, so that's they're making things hard for themselves, actually, by not accepting that the Supreme Lord is the proprietor of all planets and demigods and all the resources, and trying to do things in their own way, in their own political interests, even though it's detrimental to the society. If they're going to make profit for themselves and for their supporters, then that's just exactly what they're going to do. That's the way business is done these days. Like that. And so that's the problem. Basic problem is identifying as the self as being the material body. And so what was stated in the class was that they're actually leading society into hell. So there was describing that the Srimad Bhagavatam 5th canto describes 27 hells. And not only that, but by their arrangements, they're very elaborately making this world a hell. And they're doing a pretty good job of it. And it was saying by this Krishna conscious movement, this Sankirtan movement, is that we can actually transform this planet, even though it's becoming a living hell, into the spiritual world, into the atmosphere of Vaikuntha Loka, like that. So that's our interest. He's saying right now we're still in the beginning stages, but it's taking hold. And he was talking about how Srila Prabhupada single-handedly opened centers all over the world and initiated disciples and devotees. So he's saying now all of his disciples, many, many devotees, they were just as empowered to preach Krishna consciousness all over the world. And then just imagine what type of effect that will have. So he was saying that Prabhupada, he was when he was speaking in his classes and as he was opening temples all over the world and translating his books, he had a sense of urgency. And that was one of the things that he pointed out. So he said that we should have this sense of urgency to become God conscious and become Krishna consciousness and help spread this mission to those who are still suffering in the material world and help to transform this planet, which is quickly becoming a hellish planet, into the spiritual atmosphere by Vaikuntha Lokas. So they're also discussing that these verses are very similar to the Purusha Sukta. And the Purusha Sukta, it also explains like the universal form of the Lord and how the administrators, men, animals, demigods, and they have their respective positions of power or empowerment, and how the universal affairs are being carried on by the demigods, who are the Lord's arms or the Lord's administrators to see the proper order of the universe, of the universal affairs. And what's happening, he described a chapter in the I believe he said it was in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that Indra, after defeating the demons at a big war for a real long time, had returned and he was being worshipped, and he was being praised and worshipped, and he was getting puffed up and intoxicated by this worship and praise. And Brihaspati, his spiritual master, the spiritual master of the demigods, had appeared. And Lord Indra didn't pay his respects to Brihaspati because he was intoxicated by power and being worshipped. And Brihaspati, he knew the situation, but Lord Indra was actually cursed by Brihaspati by committing the offense of not offering respects to a spiritual master, and the spiritual master had entered. That's the reason why Balaram killed Ramaharshana. Ramaharshana was very, very vast learned in the scriptures. And he knew that Balaram and Krishna were the Supreme Personality of Godhead, their worshipful object, the deity. And when Balaram entered into the assembly, Ramaharshana didn't pay his respects. I believe that he actually had some sort of reason for it, which was in the Vedas, but it wasn't correct in this specific situation. And Balaram actually killed Ramaharshana with a blade of grass. Now, Ramaharshana is the father of Suta Goswami. Suta Goswami, who's speaking Srimad Bhagavatam to the sages at Namasaranya, what he had heard from Sukadev Goswami. So that was the whole idea. It's like, well, who will speak? Because Ramaharshana was speaking. So they're saying, well, the son of the father is just as good as the father. And Siddhi Goswami is vast and learned in the knowledge in the scriptures. So, he actually took Rama Harshana's place, as a speaker, as being the son, being just as good as the father. So these are some things that are tied together. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, last week there was a verse I wanted to mention this. He said that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very, very merciful, and he stands in Tribhanga, or a threefold bending form, right? And his foot is what is it? It's his left foot, right foot. As the right foot is touching the ground just with the heel upraised in the air. Right. So this is just to give the blessings to the devotees, because when the breeze blows, then you get the dust from his lotus feet. So the Supreme Lord is very merciful. Everyone else stands on all flat 2 feet standing on the ground. But Krishna is in this reclining posture and threefold bending form, Tribhanga. And then he was also mentioning that the universal form would be very hard to worship, because you wouldn't be able to get a bucket big enough or enough water to pour over the head of the universal body of the form of the Lord of the universe. So the Lord is so kind that has become the deity, that we can approach the Lord and we can worship the Lord, and we can pour the water over the Lord's head, give him the bathing. So water's got sandalwood and tulsi and flower petals, and we massage the Lord with some nice, some fragrant oils. So it's done very nicely. Let's see. Trying to think of anything else that I kind of wanted to say or mention. Does anybody have any questions or comments, or subject for discussion?
Thank you, Prabhu, for a very nice presentation. I was just curious, in your point of view, we know that Prabhupada started the movement with Sankirtan, chanting the holy name. And then later on, because of his spiritual master's instructions, he focused on book distribution. But in your opinion, do you think book distribution can take the lead, since in book distribution, everywhere it's suggested to practice Sankirtan, the holy name? So if there's no example of Sankirtan being practiced, people are just going to take the instructions as, okay, well, it's supposed to be practiced. So is book distribution really supposed to take the front, spot in the movement, or is Sankirtan supposed to be leading to give an example of what the books are suggesting?
Yeah, well, there's Harinam Sankirtan, and there's book distribution Sankirtan. So they're both Sankirtan, which is Sankirtan basically is propagating the holy names of the Lord. So Krishna is not different from Bhagavad Gita, and he's not different from Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of the Lord. So who gave the term, the Brihat Mridanga? Was that Bhakti Siddhanta? He gave the term to the printing press, the Brihat Mridanga, right? And so Harinam Sankirtan is nice, and that's blissful, and we're giving people the holy names, and we distribute books, and we have a chance to go out and meet them. We go out in our devotional clothing. And then book distribution, we're a little more like undercover, under the wraps, and giving something to people. Jai Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. Giving something to people that they can take home and continue to give reference to it. But not only that, but Prabhupada, he was giving reference to propaganda, how the Chinese had propagated communism through comic books and other types of publication. And there was something that I read about prior to the Civil War. There was propaganda being circulated regarding freedom of the slaves. And what they're actually saying is that they're actually working on enslaving everyone, right? But somebody else is saying, but it's all about money. It was about about cotton production and making a profit than anything else. More about the freedom for everyone or slavery or whatever. And it's really all about business and money. What it really all comes down to, and what else? Because he gave that example about communist China. He spread propaganda through books, written pamphlets, comic books. So in the same way, if we were to propagate the propaganda of God consciousness or Krishna consciousness, then there it's strongly suggested to chant the holy names of the Lord, the Hare Krishna mantra, and to refrain from eating meat, taking intoxication, engaging in illicit sex and gambling. Among some people, they'll even admit it, but they're practicing celibacy, right? Someone who doesn't take intoxication or take drugs. So, this information is taking hold, maybe in its small and subtle ways. But then, these are our bombs, our big bombs. When they go dropping the bombs again, when the war starts, then we've got our bombs that we dropped, and we can show people, a way of life or self-sustenance, which is probably going to be needed, if the war and the bombs are going to be that big enough, that we'll need to resort to agriculture and that agrarian lifestyle again in the villages, and agriculture and self-sustenance. There's always a source of light and electricity. There's the kerosene lamps and there's candles. There's some sort of system for plumbing and water and irrigation, cleanliness. To go down the river, take a bath in Ganges. There's a time-tested process. Everything is instructed in the Vedas. In fact, that's what Bhagavad Gita. There's the verse. In the beginning of creation, I sent forth men, demigods, sacrifices for Vishnu, and said, "Be thou happy by such sacrifice, because it will bestow upon you all desirable things." Like that. So by worshiping Vishnu or Krishna and becoming an agrarian society, society will again become peaceful. Because that's the whole idea of the Vedic culture, is to lead the people, the masses, the people in society in such a way, according to the Varnashram Dharma system, is recommended in the Vedas by Krishna himself, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's the instructions of the universe. When the universe was manifested, so were the Vedas, and so were the instructions to practice jaga or sacrifice. The Supreme Lord is the Jagapati. So we're also reading how the fire is the generating force of the mouth, right? So, or the Brahmanas are also considered to be the mouth of the Lord. But when we have the Agnihotra fire sacrifice, when we offer the grains and the banana, the clarified ghee and the fuel to the fire, this is actually the mouth of the Lord. And that when we do this Agnihotra, so that's the significance of the fire itself and the Agnihotra sacrifice. So actually, so that's but the verses we were just reading, how the Lord's mouth is also the generating principle of fire, right? So did that answer your question for the Sankirtan? It's the same thing, the Brihatmadanga book distribution and Harinam Sankirtan, chanting the names of the Lord. But we're giving them a book, they can take that home and refer to it at any time they want. But when we're chanting the Hare Krishna holy name of the Lord, they're hearing it from us once now, right? And they don't have anything to refer to.
Doesn't seem to me that a drum, whether it be a big drum or a small drum, is the same as the holy name.
Well, the Brihat Mridanga is being referred to as the printing press. Right, so the musical instrument to convey the holy name of the Lord, musical arrangement, or a literary arrangement, the drum itself, the mridanga itself isn't chanting the holy name of the Lord, but it's to accompany the chanting like that. Yeah, that's why we just don't play the mridanga or just the kartals and any other musical instruments without words, without a song, and our songs are about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You had a question or comment, or?
Hare Krishna, can I just say a short comment to this conversation?
Yeah.
Well, is it not that, or I guess question, but is it not that Krishna and his words and his name are non-different? So when we hear his words through his books, is that not the same as, just chanting his holy names?
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, we're personally associating with Krishna through that specific process. Of course, the primary principle is chanting our japa, like that, but we should read the books and think of Krishna's pastimes and, study Srila Prabhupada's purports. All of his purports are referred to by the different previous acharyas who commented on these specific aspects of the instructions that Srimad Bhagavatam gives. So they're like expert in like the different fields. But yeah, everything we do here is associating with Krishna, taking prasadam even, offering prasad, taking prasad, devotional practices, wearing devotional clothing and applying tilak, like that, we're all on the same page. This is our consciousness, our community collective consciousness, like that. Cleanliness, the Brahminical culture, the Brahminical standards. Yeah. Any other questions, comments? You have a question?
So I was wondering, why is it that this world is temporary and full of miseries?
Yeah, basically it's being mismanaged. But even in Satya Yuga or Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, especially Kali Yuga, we're forced to the threefold miseries, which is Adi Atmaka Deva, miseries inflicted by the demigods, which is called acts of God, hurricanes, storms, tornadoes, what's freezing? Extreme cold, extreme heat, right? And then there's earthquakes, and wars. And then there's the Adibhotika Klesha, or miseries inflicted by other living entities. So someone or some things outside of ourselves that are embodied, like another person, an attack by another person, or mosquito bite gives us malaria, yellow fever, jaundice, right? And then there's Adi Atmaka, right? Adi Atmaka Boka. And it's miseries inflicted by one's own body and mind. So that's Adi Atmaka, right? Klesha. The klesha means misery. So yeah, these are nectar of instruction, which are described, a physical infirmity or mental infirmity, psychological. Basically that's the standard of today's society right now. Prabhupada was saying that we can come to our healthy state of consciousness and God consciousness. But in our past experience with the karmis and the demons, you kind of notice these people are kind of criminally minded, or they're, dysfunctional. It seems like certain people have a different take on reality. You like that? Well, it's blatantly obvious, that they're like, off on the wrong track somewhere. It's not so much of the psychological effects of, during the same situation that something had occurred. So there's someone to your left, or someone to your right, or someone's facing you, someone who is across the street, and they've all got different stories about what happened. And the police are just trying to get all the information. And they come back to you and say, well, he said, and then he says something completely different and turned around like the other person was at fault. So no, you tell them what you saw, and you saw the other person was at fault, and you tell them what happened according to, right? I mean, but everybody's got their different versions and take on reality somehow or other. I don't know if they're so caught up in their mind that they can't distinguish between reality and illusion, or just exactly what it is. It's a phenomenon they're well aware of. They don't know what to do about it. There's nothing to really do about it. Just try to get the information and piece it together. I was in guard training, and the teacher and instructor, he was talking about this exact same thing. And he said, I can get my tape measure and I measure the, in a car accident, he measures the skid, and he measures the distance between the last corner where the last a traffic light was, and the timing between that traffic light and the next traffic light, and the distance between there. And he can tell exactly what speed they were traveling according to the length of the skid and the distance from the last corner of the last traffic light. He has a science to this whole thing, a mathematical equation, so that they can look at it, investigate it in from another perspective, right? So, and then there's the miseries of having to take your birth, right? Birth and death. Krishna says, Bhagavad Gita, for those who are dead, birth is certain, and for those who have taken their birth, death is certain. And disease, and everyone must get old and suffer the pangs of invalidity, and the pains of getting old, arthritis, your senses and your organs are starting to fail you, like that. Papa was saying a man with 3 legs. Do you know what a man with 3 legs is? Right. Yeah. The man walking with the cane. Yeah. Like that. So that's the invalidity. And you start to have to take the aid of a walking stick. Like that. So yeah, these are the sufferings in the material world. So in order to end the sufferings in the material world, you never again have to take birth, and never again have to die or grow old. One is eternally situated in their happy relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and their specific devotional service personally to the Lord in any one of the relationships of servitude, neutrality, parental affection, friendship, and love. Like that. So there's the birds and the peacocks and the trees and the sarabis. Prabhupada said even the water, the river is a devotee's living entity, wants to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yeah, so did that answer your question? Yeah. Okay, great. Any other questions, comments, topics for discussion? Srimad Bhagavatam class ki jai.